Hello everyone, welcome to my Pecha Kucha presentation about globalization trends affecting the sports events industry right now. So let's get started. What is globalization? Hell defines globalization as the stretching and intensification of social, economic and political relations across regions and continents. He explains one of the processes in globalization as being the expansion and development of trade across diverse countries. One trend that has become very apparent through globalization is the rise of the non-West, meaning countries outside Western Europe and America. For countries such as South Africa, which held the Rugby and the Football World Cup, hosting these have many benefits, including raising the profile of the country, attracting tourists, and creating enthusiasm among South Africans. This is a massive change from the 60s and 70s when sporting tours were cancelled here because of apartheid. In addition to the social benefits of hosting a mega sporting event are the apparent economic benefits. A common misconception is that hosting an event such as the Olympics can have a massive economic boost on the country. It is beneficial for the host government to be seen spending money on large-scale construction projects, although the economic and sustained improvement to the living conditions for everyday people is less apparent. Solberg and Prias identified that most destination management organizations agreed that hosting sports events can have positive economic impacts because of tourist expenditure, but this additional spending may not counterbalance the money that was spent on various infrastructure, such as sports venues and improved public transport. Short coined the term event capture, meaning instead of the host city flourishing and benefiting from having a mega event, they are held captive. Within the term event capture, he identifies four main forms, the first being infrastructure, then financial, legal and political. Possibly the most obvious issue is that cities spend billions on infrastructure for sporting venues that are only used for about 2 weeks and are then left to go derelict. In 2016, Brazil hosted the Summer Olympics in Rio, which they were awarded in 2009 when the country's economy was experiencing a nearly double-digit annual growth. But between then and 2016, they experienced the worst recession in decades and a massive increase in violence, including a 26% increase in murders from 2015. Many promises were made before the Olympics that Rio would have improved facilities for residents and tourists, and although some were put in place, they were not built to last, and a cycling path collapsed into the sea 4 months before the Games even started. The working conditions for labourers were poor, with them reporting problems with maintenance, flooding and mould. Members of the Brazilian Journal of Tourism Research undertook a longitudinal study of Rio residents' perceptions of the Games before, during and after they finished. They asked various questions about how the Olympics are affecting their community and businesses. They found that their perceptions changed throughout the study, and although Rio has had negative press about the legacy of the Games, they believe there is still a window of opportunity for stakeholders to do something about it. So what does the future hold? Dawson Fletcher suggests that in order to attract new audiences and investors to mega events, there is a need to expand into possibly untouched areas. This could mean a massive growth for the non-West and a changing of the status quo, which previously meant that only very developed countries could host mega sporting events. Another unfortunate trend that has emerged through globalization and the big business that is sporting events is corruption. Johnston puts forward that with the increase in movement of people and capital and the new opportunities to pursue wealth and power, corruption has become a lot more apparent, with things being done to benefit the few at the expense of the many. Santos identified that the annual cost of corruption is into the trillions. Varying sources such as the International Chamber of Commerce and the World Economic Forum report different amounts, but they all agree that it is extremely high, and the result of corruption is the unfair distribution of resources and power across the world, resulting in inequalities for those on the outside. Manoli establishes three main strands of corruption: public office-centred, public interest-centred and market-centred. In sport, the types of corruption include match fixing, doping and bribery. Officials can be bribed with gifts or money in order to influence their decision-making to benefit someone or an organisation that may not actually deserve it. In today's society, sporting associations such as FIFA have seemingly become more important than states. These companies are a prime example of globalisation, as there are less cultural and political obstacles in their way for them to conduct business across multiple nations. This has led to their businesses booming, with the UK Premier League generating a record revenue of £4.5 billion in the 2016-17 season. Money is a key motivator as to why people decide to take part in corrupt activities, which is a shame as sport is a source of unity for many fans around the world. But the people who wish to manipulate competitions for their own gain ruin the integrity of sport. With their desire for money and the low risk of being detected, it is very attractive to criminals. In 2018, authorities in Belgium charged 19 people, including referees, agents, and football coaches, with alleged fraud or match fixing. The federal investigation into organised crime, money laundering, and corruption began in 2017 and concluded in 2018 after 44 premises were raided. In 2015, there was a famous corruption scandal involving ex-FIFA boss Sepp Blatter and ex-UEFA boss Michael Platini, in which it was found out that Blatter had transferred Platini £1.3 million in a disloyal payment. Both men deny there was any wrongdoing, calling the payment a gift and a gentleman's agreement for consultancy work. However, their pleas were not believed and both were banned from football for 8 years. To stamp out corruption, sports federations now have codes of ethics which are put in place to tackle the two biggest governance issues within sports, these being anti-doping and financial corruption. A significant advancement in the policing of this comes from the European Union and the Council of Europe, who created and enforced the Convention on the Manipulation of Sports Competitions. This convention, also known as the Macaulay Convention, is the first piece of international law ruling on the subject of corruption in sport. Put in place in September 2019, this legislation provides cooperation mechanisms for its member countries to follow. All members of the Macaulay community are committed to fighting corruption together to ensure the integrity of sport. However, having said all this, there is the issue of Brexit at the moment and the uncertainty of what that will hold for the events industry and the UK altogether. Many people are asking, will this have an impact on business in the UK? We still don't really know what will happen until Boris Johnson and the parliamentary officials come up with a deal. But it's not all doom and gloom, as events industry leaders believe that Brexit won't really have a massive impact on business and could even have a positive impact, such as better working relationships with countries outside of Europe. It's an exciting time for the events and sports events industry. It will be interesting to see how globalisation affects what happens in the future with the types of events that are put on and where they will be held.